Fox News reporter John Decker, who is an attorney, really laid it out for us. And the good analogy is Ken Starr and Whitewater and Monica Lewinsky. There's no Monica Lewinsky without Whitewater, and Whitewater didn't start out looking for sex. That's what they ended up with, and it was the lie that did him in. Ryan Nobles, CNN, good morning. Although it didn't do him in, but it did ultimately get him impeached. Ryan Nobles, good morning.
Yeah, and Bill, I think a good thing for your listeners to think about is that when you're going to investigate something, you go because you have a clue that something's wrong. We do this as reporters. And if you go into an investigation with your premise already formed, you're doing yourself a disservice as an investigator. Yeah. You go in because you have a clue that something's wrong, but then the evidence leads you to the ultimate conclusion. The evidence leads you to the truth. So this idea that you start an investigation because you have a suspicion about something, and then when you begin to uncover the information, you find out something else, means that then the whole investigation is not worth your time or effort, is lunacy. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of investigations that start out based on different premises and then end up at a different place. So if you find wrongdoing, if you find illegality, you find illegality. And there's no doubt that Robert Mueller and the Southern District of New York, which investigated the Michael Cohen case, demonstrated yesterday that they found illegality enough for 16 convictions yesterday.
So, although I have to tell you, we were just earlier talking about Mueller. Have you ever seen him smile? I don't think I've ever seen a picture or a video of him smiling.
He's a very serious man. There's no question about that.
There is no screwing around there. And with Rudy Giuliani over the weekend saying, the leaks, they're coming from him. That's where else would they come from? Well, what do you think of that? I mean, don't you think that Rudy's playing a little reverse psychology?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you this. I have a lot of colleagues that are covering the Mueller special counsel end of this, and I can tell you how frustrated they are about the lack of leaks coming from the Mueller team. There are very few, if any, that are coming from that side.
How about Rudy? Is he doing even Trump, the strongest Trump supporters who really believe the media is out to get the president, that they're not fair, that they lie, who really believes that the president is being had here and there's nothing there, but they're uncomfortable with Rudy Giuliani. He's coming off as kind of a joke. Now, is that by design, or is he just the president's got to know that, so he's got to be like, let Rudy go out and play, and it'll cause a few news stories that are not going to be paying attention to me.
There's two strategies taking place here, right, Bill? There's a White House strategy and there's a Mueller strategy. And the White House strategy from almost the very beginning, and certainly it ramped up when Rudy Giuliani came on board, was to try and distract, confuse, and discredit the Mueller investigation at every step of the way. So when Rudy goes out and does countless television interviews and he tries to muddy up the waters, he was very effective at that, at least in the early going. And the polls reflected the fact that he was damaging Robert Mueller's credibility. But Robert Mueller continued to play the long game. And it seems as though Mueller's tactic here is to answer Rudy Giuliani's claims with cold, hard facts and convictions. And so, Rudy can complain and can, make the argument that Robert Mueller's investigation isn't leading to anything before they actually drop the hammer. Now the hammer is starting to be dropped. You've got 16 convictions that are basically attributed to the beginning of the special counsel investigation. It makes it a lot more difficult for the Giulianis of the world to make those arguments. So, ultimately, though, Bill, and we've said this many times before, this for the president, not the president's cronies, they obviously have legal problems. For the president, it remains a political problem. And, they're not going to indict a sitting president. It's ultimately going to come down to whether or not the Congress has the gumption to file impeachment proceedings. But if you're wondering if there's a leak in the dam, the fact that yesterday in an open court of law, the president was basically accused of being an indicted co-conspirator in a federal conviction certainly begins the process where you might start to see Republicans get to be a little concerned about that.
Well, and especially with midterms coming up, but I think my guess is they're going to stick with this guy because he has been, that we joked about it earlier, Teflon Don. Nothing really sticks to President Trump. And by the way, Cohen yesterday didn't use the president by name, but he said a candidate. That it was a candidate.
But if you
who
look
else
at the
would that be?
And you look at they go on to say in the actual paperwork that a candidate who ultimately became president of the United States. There's no question that he's talking about Donald Trump.
Sure, it's not Obama. I think we're pretty sure of that. Yeah.
I think we're pretty sure of that.
I think we're pretty sure. So, I mean, you're on the ground, you're talking to people, and a lot of times you're interviewing constituents. Say he comes back with collusion. I don't know that, there's a big part of the base, the president's base, that won't believe it's true, because this is a president who probably would deny, and say this is just the continuation of the witch hunt. Right. But even if some of the things are true, the statement, if you're a big supporter, you're like, yeah, but look what Clinton did. What are you
exactly?
What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually at the White House this morning, and our producer Kevin Liptak's been in contact with people overnight, and I think the strategy, and from Kevin's reporting, and I think it's probably not a surprise, that they're going to do everything they can to discredit all of the actors in this play, right? They're going to the tactic they're going to take with their supporters is they're going to say, yeah, Michael Cohen's accusing the president of of committing a crime, but how can you trust him? He's now a convicted felon. He's a serial liar. So do you trust the president, your favorite president, who you've been with from the very beginning, or do you trust this shady New York City lawyer? And it goes right down the board. You know, the president has been distancing himself from Paul Manafort for months. And so they're just going to try and come up with every excuse in the book about how this doesn't reflect back on the president. Even though the president has repeatedly said that he only hires the best people. And I think to your point, you know, and I think we've said this a couple of times, the report, I mean, the problem that Robert Mueller has, the longer this investigation drags out, is that the longer it drags out, the bigger the return on this investment must be. And it's got to be so definitive, at least for the president's supporters, you know, that hardcore 35 to 40% of the American public, that it's enough to say definitively this is what the president was up to.
Yeah.
Even under those circumstances, does he lose that 35%? Probably not. But if you see a tidal wave, I firmly believe this is all going to come back to the midterms, because we have no other barometer to judge public opinion definitively as we do in the midterm elections. And if there's a tidal wave like some are predicting, then maybe that's when the dam finally collapses. But we won't know that until voters go to the polls.
On the midterms, the upcoming midterms, of course, we're going to be right in the heat of the thick of things coming up, and we already are. But it is about to get, especially after the primary, it's about to get much worse. A lot of money. I was going through direct mail pieces that I just collect. I collect them because you never know what you're going to find and save and look back on. And I had a huge stack from the last 22nd congressional race 2 years ago. You can only imagine how much is going to be sent out here and how much money is going to be spent. Now, Brindisi's camp yesterday put out a press release saying that the race has flipped to a toss-up. I thought it already was a toss-up. Is there another organization calling it a toss-up versus leaning Republican? Have you heard anything?
I'm pretty sure that CNN has rated it a toss-up from the very beginning. But, you know, there's so many different outfits that do it. And you know what? That's a fundraising strategy. So what's interesting about campaigns is if you look at the fundraising appeals from campaigns, they always make it seem as though the candidate is playing from behind, because you're more motivated to donate to a candidate that you like if you think there's a chance that they might be losing and pushing them over that. So the idea that they're saying that the race has become a toss-up would give you the idea that the campaign is surging. But, I mean, I think it's been a 50-50 race from the beginning. Yeah. And it's going to be 50-50 right up until the finish line.
I think right now it's anybody's deal here. Lastly, the president in town for Claudia Tenney last week. This week it was Linda McMahon in town doing a business roundtable, which was played up as a little more official business than a campaign stop. She came short of endorsing Claudia Tenney, which I found interesting.
I also heard back. They heard the interview, her office, and contacted us to say, just so we're clear, this was not. No, it was not.
It was not
an endorsement. It was part of her trip to 40 other states.
Oh, okay.
That's what they said.
Right.
That's an interesting point. So yesterday the White House held a conference call with reporters about the president's midterm plans, and one of the things that they talked about was how it's not just going to be the president that's going to be on the road supporting candidates, but they're also going to send cabinet members out to to support candidates. And there's a very kind of sticky distinction when a cabinet member is on the road for an elected official. They're allowed to campaign, but they have to make it clear that they're not there in their official capacity, that they're there as a private citizen.
And they made it clear.
It sounds like so the event that you may have been, they are allowed to do official events with members of Congress, and those are veiled campaign events under any circumstances. And this is something both Republicans and Democrats do. That's, it's not to say that this is something unique to them, but the point being that what you saw play out this week with the president coming first and then sending a cabinet secretary, that's going to be a strategy that is going to be played out all across the country. And this is the thing. This is the other bit of reporting that Kevin Liptek has this morning, is that, the White House is now kind of focused in on the fact that they've got to hold on to the House in these midterm elections. Like, that is the president's salvation there. If they can hold on to the House, then all of his legal troubles essentially go away. And that's why you're going to see him stepping it up. I mean, the president has said that he wants to be on the road 6 times a week if at all possible. This is part of, and you guys know what's going to see it better than you guys.
There is no doubt about it. I expect we're going to have another visit by the president, a rally-style visit, is what we've been told. So, and by the way, Anthony Brindisi's approach, I'm not bringing anybody in. I'm not bringing people in. This is my race. I would rather be meeting with people and doing town hall. Interesting strategy right there, I think.
Yeah, probably a smart one, especially in a district that probably leans a little bit right. I mean, who could he bring in that would help him? Maybe Joe Biden, maybe Michelle Obama, something along those lines. But any Democrat he brings in is they're going to find a way to work it back to Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats that are unpopular. So better for him to play it safe and just run on his own record.
Getting you out at 55 on the dime. Ryan Nobles, thanks so much.
Nice
we'll talk
job.
again next
I'll
week.
I'll be on CNN at the top of the hour. Not that I don't want your listeners to keep tuning into you.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. All right, have fun. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Ryan Nobles from CNN. Okay, so it is interesting, that approach, because who could Anthony Brindisi bring in that
isn't going to hurt him?
Wouldn't hurt him.
Yeah.
So what if Republicans were to endorse him? Find a Republican that could come in. You really can't. I mean, let's say a George Bush came in. Which would never ever happen, but or a Jeb Bush or any of those figures that are really looked at as being rhinos, right? There are people that don't support the party. I don't think there's really anybody on even on the moderate side. So Joe Biden probably would be the only one. Obama probably would not do him justice here. Who could he bring in?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Short of another Trump supporter?
If you brought in a Trump supporter.
I mean, but that's the thing. That would be huge for him. But even let's say John Kasich.
That would hurt him on the other side. But even John Kasich
would hurt him.
It would
because
hurt him.
He's so anti-Trump. Yeah. That's what I mean.
It's interesting because when we talk to, this is obviously a local endorsement or potential, but when we talked to Anthony Picenti last week, he said he wasn't getting into the NY22
Not going to get
race,
into it,
which is interesting because I think we all know, and I'm not breaking any news, he would never be endorsing Claudia Tenney, almost never.